All right, welcome in, everybody. I'm sure having a very fun night, calm, nothing scary happened. Nobody's
Never in
gonna,
doubt.
yeah,
Never
nobody's
in
gonna
doubt.
say anything bad. It's just everybody's gonna be happy, and because we're talking a K-State win. I mean, that's the name of the game. Wildcat victories. That's all that matters here, right? Everybody feels good about where this team's at. They feel like they look like a top 25 football team. Oh, fans drinking. So I mean, that tells you what he thinks of the performance tonight.
Just a little sip. Just a little sip.
One side of the ball looked like a top 25 team at times.
At times.
What, like when they didn't run it?
Yeah, when they didn't run it.
Well, and the final numbers end up not looking horrible for the running game, but you could tell that they weren't great. We'll get into all of that. Offensive line, once again, was pretty scary in this game, not in a good way. North Dakota was not scared of the offensive line. The defense, also very scary in a bad way. I came into it saying the one thing that I wanted to see more than anything in this game was an interception. It did not happen, and North Dakota put the ball in the air plenty of times. So we've got a lot to get into from K-State's win. Yes, it is a win, but a lot of this talk is going to ultimately sound like a loss because of the way that K-State ended up having things play out tonight. 38-35, they take down North Dakota to get their first win of the season. I'm Mason, both joined by Drew Galloway and KSU fan. As always, your Sunday show crew here on a Saturday night recapping this game. I want to get this. I want to get this
for me.
Yeah, well, that's true. It will be Sunday by the time we're 15 minutes in for Drew. So we're all in different places here. I'm still in Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Fan is back at home, and Drew is also never left home. So we are ready to go. But this is what I wanted to throw out first, because I think some people might be curious. One score game against an FCS opponent. The last 6 instances of this, 2021, K-State wins by 8 over Southern Illinois. They went 7-5 that season. That season got Courtney Messingham fired. 2018, 5-7 after they needed some heroics late to beat South Dakota in Bill Snyder's final season. That tells you all you need to know right there. He retired. And in 2013, many would remember Chris Kleiman was probably having flashbacks when North Dakota was engineering that go-ahead drive in the fourth quarter. North Dakota State beat K-State by a field goal. The Cats went 7-5 that season. 2011, Drew and I talked about it in KSO Classic this summer. I also shared my negative tweet about, or Facebook post about Colin Klein from that game, where I thought he wasn't the guy because they beat Eastern Kentucky 10-7. Also took some late heroics from the quarterback in that game, but they went 10-2, and as you see, that's the outlier. 2009, K-State went 6-6 after a narrow victory to start the season. I believe that was UMass that was the FCS opponent in that game, and then 2006 they went 7-5. I can't even remember who Illinois State season opener when they renamed the stadium. So there you go, 7-5 for 06. And if you wanted to add bowl records to it, it changes it a little bit. 06 would go to 7-6. 2013 would go to 8-5. 2021 would also go to 8-5. With that little history and oddities of the close games with FCS opponents, does that mean anything to you? I'll start with Drew.
I mean, a little bit, yeah. It does mean a lot because you look back on it and the one game in the one season, like it ends up playing out okay for K-State is 2011. That's probably the thing that is like, if you're trying to really grasp for straws and hold out hope, it's like maybe this is like a blip, and like it looks funny after the season. But there was times where I think that K-State was the much better team. There were also a lot of times where they weren't. So I think that it means something, but it's so hard in this day and age of college football, where everything, it feels like, is so game to game, even more than season to season, that I don't know if I'm willing to make like that huge of a conclusion just based on this one game. Also because I think that if you really dive into what North Dakota did, I don't know if you really had a great idea of what they were going to do on either side of the ball coming into the game with a new coach, new scheme on both sides of the ball. So I think that kind of played a little bit into it. And I mean, I know that it probably played a lot into why the offense also looked pretty clunky at times. I mean, there were multiple instances where North Dakota just said, we know you're going to throw and we're going to send 8. So good luck. And it just threw off some timing. So it means something, but I'm more willing to see what it looks like next week before I really jump fully off with this stat just in general.
Well, and in some ways, you think about not knowing what North Dakota was going to do on offense. Even once you got into the game, you didn't really know because they were so heavy with some of their misdirection. Chris Kleiman talked about very Tim Brando of him to bring up the eye candy after the game and use that terminology for it. In some ways, very similar to what KU tried doing in 2023. It was clearly an inferior team to K-State. Ultimately, they ended up beating themselves, and K-State made that late push. But it took a long time for K-State to get acclimated in that game because KU was basically running an offense that they had just not done all season, and it was based on misdirection and kind of getting you confused, and K-State obliged. Now, the concern would be is that Chris Kleiman talked about after the game, eye discipline was terrible, all this stuff. We've heard that repeatedly now over the last few seasons with Joe Klanderman's defense, and so something has to change. Now, I will say, from field level, felt like they cooled it with the blitzes a little bit when it got important late in the game, so I'm sure that might make some people happy. From your point of view, Fan, what do you get out of a tight victory like this over North Dakota?
I mean, the biggest thing is at least it wasn't a loss. Like, I mean, I was fully prepared. I like to joke that never in doubt, but 205 when we gave the ball back, I thought I was prepared to. How are we going to talk about what I would have considered the worst loss in the post-1989 era of K-State football, besides maybe Austin Peay in there somewhere, maybe Snyder's first year. Like, this was going to be the worst loss that we've seen in the last since Snyder got going.
Real quick, I'll ask you this. Would you have put 2003 Marshall up there, like, in the moment? Like, because obviously we know what happened the rest of 2003. But, like, that – because somebody asked me down the field, like, is this the worst loss since – and I was like, that's probably the comp right there. But obviously they still won the league. Yeah,
Marshall would be the closest, but that's still even at the time was a decent, okay G5 kind of program. And this was a bad FCS team last year. I know they have a whole new staff, new philosophies on offense and defense. And I do think it's legitimate to bring up that that's tough to prepare for as a coach. It is tough when you don't know. And the issue is, as a coach, oftentimes you overthink and you think about so many possible scenarios that you could see on both sides of the ball that you almost overcomplicate things. And then you throw in the factor of the weird week coming back from Ireland and coming off a loss that you put a ton of stock into in the offseason. I was also prepared to say that if we'd lost that game, that maybe selling the game to go to Ireland with Iowa State was going to be one of the worst decisions in K-State athletics history. And I was in that boat with saying this, like, I was on that verge. I was ready to talk about it tonight, and it still might be. But
now it's only just a not very good
won
decision.
The game. I think, Chris Montrell, we talked about it before the game, but Chris Montrell in the chat said K-State won the game but lost morally. I think calling this a moral loss is kind of a good way to put it.
Yep.
Like, we talk about moral wins sometimes. This was kind of a moral loss. But again, at the end of the day, you take the win. If we win the next 7 in 2 months, we're not going to be thinking about this game at all. We're just going to remember it as a win. But there's a lot between here and there to happen. We'll talk about the things that went wrong in this game. But to your point of what does this mean for this season, we don't know yet. It could mean we're going to be a 7-5 team, which would be extremely disappointing for this season. But it also could mean we're 2011 again, and we find a way to squeak out some wins and make a season look better than we thought it would at the beginning.
Well, and immediately people were talking about, close games and all this other stuff after last week with Iowa State. Oh, there you go. Drew and I discussed it. They played 9 one-score games in that season, and they went 8-1 in those games. So, I mean, if you want to try to believe just based off of what you see in the first 2 weeks, you're hoping that it's more 2011 than I'm trying to think what the best comp would be on the negatives, because I don't think it's 2018. This team's better than 2018.
I think it would be more 21, where you are pretty good and have a lot of really good players, but they never really put it all together. I think 21 is probably the best comp if they go like 7-5.
Yeah. Let's just get into, because there's a lot of different angles that we're going to have to attack tonight from. If there's one positive to discuss, and even though there was some negative to his play tonight, and I know people are going to be very quick to want to point that out, because for some reason there's a faction of K-State fans that have some sick desire, I think, to hope that Avery Johnson doesn't succeed to the level that many expected of him. On the night, Avery goes 28 of 43, 65% completion. Once again, well over that 60% number that we've talked about in the offseason that needs to be a target. Career high in passing yards, goes over 300 for the first time with 318. 3 touchdowns, no picks. Believe it or not, he had a lot of half picks in there, but no picks. 43 rushing yards in total. Part of that's derailed because of a fumble that lost a lot of yards. So his actual gain on the night was pretty impressive. And that's the first place that I'll start. I thought his running tonight was a lot more like what we've talked about you need to see out of him. He saw it. He took off. He had a couple of key runs in the game where I don't think they were called, but he just immediately was like, yep, I'm taking off once he saw it. And it worked out big, including on the final drive where his big 20-plus yard run got K-State into a scoring situation. And on the very next play, he was able to hit Joe Jackson for the game-winning touchdown. So, Fan, what did you make of what you saw from Avery Johnson in his second game of this third season at K-State?
Yeah, I mean, you pointed out the numbers. They're very solid. You would take that. Now, I will say in the way I stat a game on my own charting, I would take away 27 yards from those passing yards because it was
a little cheating.
It was a forward flip jet sweep, which is really, in my book, a running play. But regardless of that, but then on the other hand, I would also kind of count that 17-yard loss as kind of a team loss because it really wasn't a play. It was a fumble by him, which he should get credit for. But he really ran the ball 6 times for 60 yards in my book, the way he kind of executed the right play. Now he gets credit for a bad play in the fumble, but I think taking the 17 yards off is kind of the stats are what they are. They count. But regardless, I agree with you. Number one, those 2 late scrambles are what we expect to see in the scramble game from Avery. You saw some burst, I thought, in those runs that we haven't seen, even in the early read play to the weak side out of an unbalanced set. I thought we saw a burst. At the same time, one time he cut it outside. I thought he could have cut inside and maybe scored on one of those later drives as well. So we saw some of that. We saw those so close, a tip ball touchdound that he had.
I said after the game, it spent more time in the North Dakota players' hands than Jerron Tibbs.
Yes, which ended up good for us. And then a touchdown drive that started with 2 balls that could have been picked as well. One of them could have been a pick 6. So the numbers are what they are at the end of the day, but you see the potential in some of the great throws he made and good plays he made. But you also saw some of those mistakes that you hope he's not making as a junior, but they were there. But at the end of the day, you'll take the final numbers, and you'll take leading the team 81 yards in less than 2 minutes, in really 1 minute of clock time in the end on the drive for that touchdown to take the lead. So I think overall the passing game was a net positive for the team. The rushing game was awful in the first half. I think it picked up and got better in the second half. Still plenty of issues there. We only had 2 drops officially, which is a net positive, it seems, for this receiving core. A couple big ones, a big one on by Tibbs on a late drive that was early. But overall, I think Avery Johnson did enough to win the game and didn't do anything in the end of the day to lose the game, which is, I think, why K-State probably ended up winning it.
Yeah, there were certainly some heart-stopping throws and decisions that he made. The benefit would be is that none of them were just like dead on detrimental, because you think about the one that Tibbs caught. Now, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have gotten a touchdown off of it, but also it would have taken a heck of a play for it to result in an interception. Yeah. The North Dakota player made a great move just to even be in position to have it in his arms the way that he did. And at the end of the day, I see what Wildcat 98 is saying about, had a chance or two to put the nail in the coffin, go up 3 scores, and that's fair.
Yes.
Part of that is also, I mean, we know how Chris Kleiman operates in these situations, and his teams, like, they were in a weird spot there, because how do you go and try to operate on a drive like that, but you don't want to try to give North Dakota a ton of time or life, so you don't really want to put the ball in the air, but you can't really run the ball to, like, they're in a very strange spot on offense. And that's what we'll talk big picture offense, running, Matt Wells, all that stuff in a little bit too. But like, that's why this looks so clunky right now, is that they really only have one thing as a team that they are doing well right now. And that's throwing the football. And that's a problem, because that's not what this team is supposed to be good at. We thought they were going to be better at it, and it's good that they are, but that should have never been the number one thing that this team's doing well. It needs to be running the football. It needs to be the pass rush. It needs to be shutting down the run. And, most of those things are struggling right now. And we knew that the secondary was going to be pretty weak to start. And I think they've been even worse than I would have expected from that. They're just disastrous today. I'm not sure you can find a corner that's playing well right now. Safeties have been kind of disappointing at times. Logan Bartley's getting a lot of playing time. I think there's some promise there. Quay Moss probably is the biggest standout on defense right now. I at least feel like he gives a damn when he's out there, and he has his moments where he has lapses, but he's also very into it. But on the Avery side of things, I don't want it to get lost that the completion percentage is up again. He throws for a career high. The 3 touchdowns, all that's great. People were mad. They said that I was lazy, even though I wrote more words on the quarterback last week in grades than any other position, because I gave him an incomplete, because I had seen Avery Johnson go out and have some okay games. And, he had the Colorado moment. It was a big throw. He only had to run 2 plays to beat Colorado last year. That was a lot more on Colorado crapping the bed because Dion is an undisciplined fraud than anything that Avery did. I needed to see the ball in Avery Johnson's hands and him to be able to not screw it up and go take the team on his back and lead a game-winning drive, a legitimate game-winning drive, something that we just witnessed Rocco Beck do last week, something that Rocco did a lot last year that other quarterbacks in this league have done. And Avery Johnson got the opportunity. I know that the opponent is not what you wanted it to be, but you got the result that you needed to see. And it was massive that Avery was able to pull that off. I don't know what the rest of the season looks like. I tend to think that it's not going to be as good as I thought it was at the start of the year, that we should just brace ourselves for that now. But if you want to believe in something, Avery Johnson's now proven over 2 games that even when he's not playing his best, he's not the problem on this team. He's been one of the few bright spots this season, and that's where the development has come from, and the fact that he can pull off that game-winning drive when pressure's tight, because I wasn't sure that he could. I thought that we might see an interception in the game, and it just be one of those where you go, you know what, he doesn't have it. But that game-winning drive is the difference in the outlook for the rest of the season in Avery Johnson's career for me. And so it sucks that it had to happen in a game like this, because I would have much rather have found out things about Luis Rodriguez as the kicker and the defense being able to do this and, make it be a 52-10 game like I predicted. But in the long run, you got the win, and possibly the most important thing is that Avery Johnson knows he can put a drive like that together now. 10 plays, just over a minute of clock, and they didn't use a single one of their timeouts. That's pretty impressive to me.
Yeah, I think that is probably the biggest takeaway from this game is how well that Avery played and just how there's still like little things that we can nitpick and say that he needs to do better. One, I think, was just a miscommunication between him and Jerron Tibbs in the first half where like Jerron Tibbs, all he had to do was walk 5 yards, turn around, and the ball was coming to him and he was going to get the first down. But Avery threw it so hard and so fast that Tibbs never got turned around. There was also I think both wheel routes to Braden Lofton. Avery probably wants back right now. And then just some of the incompletions looked a little funky. But also, like, you look in, like, the raw stats. Like, we're saying that he has all these things that he can work on and still completed 70% of his passes. He fixes some of those things, like that we're talking about. His completion percentage ends up being closer to 80%, which is unheard of. So I think that his ceiling, it just keeps getting higher and higher. And Mesa, you said that you don't know if K-State's going to have the season that they could have, but like Avery could still have the season that we think. I think that if Avery has the season that we think and that he's had so far in these 2 games, there's a chance that he could will K-State to win some games down the line. So you look at a game like this, and this is a game where you think, you know, if he keeps rattling these games off and not turning the ball over, like that's a guy that's probably going to get drafted at the end of the season. So like that's why you need to really capitalize on this little window that you have. He was decisive in the run game, like we've been wanting to. He even laid a shoulder into a North Dakota guy, like we've been clamoring for him to do. So I think that everything that you saw from Avery tonight was probably the best of his career. And I wrote about it in Players of the Game. I wrote about it in Pluses, Concerns, and Surprises because I had to find some positives. K-State needed every last yard that Avery Johnson had tonight. And if you were going to pick a game for him to be at his best, you don't want it to be North Dakota, like you really need the game-winning drive, but it damn sure feels good that you got it when you needed it. Like that, if K-State loses this game tonight, there's a chance you're staring down the barrel of like 3-9. Instead, you win, and you hope that you had your bad game from Ireland out of the way because everybody that's gone over there has had one bad game when they've came back. So you hope that you had your bad game.
And Chris Kleiman said that afterwards, that because he talked to these coaches, he said every one of them said you're going to have a hangover game, and they made it clear that it may not be that first game back. It could be game 2, it could be game 3, it could be whenever, and that's why it's going to be fascinating. Like Iowa State showed up and had no problem today with South Dakota
with a much better FCS team.
Yeah. But does that set up for them to go and lay a massive egg in the Cyhawk game next week? Like, based off of that quote by Chris Kleiman, I tend to think that might be what happens. And if it doesn't, you should start buying all the Iowa State stock in the world, as disgusting as that would be. But if they can go and take it to Iowa next week, and that would be one of the biggest home wins in program history, you're looking at an Iowa State team that, like, yeah, it might be the real deal that they win that Big 12 title this year that they've been craving since, I don't know what, like when the Titanic hit the iceberg or something.
Because last year, I mean, Florida State was a disaster the whole season, but you could say like their hangover game was losing to Boston College, who was not very good. Last year, Georgia Tech, they beat Georgia State after starting slow in their game after Ireland. Came back that next week and lost to Syracuse, who was a pretty solid team last year. But like they had it, Florida State had it, Navy had it, Notre Dame's had it. I'm sure that I'm sure that North Carolina or TCU will probably have it next year.
Well, and look, you can kind of pinpoint this for even Northwestern, who in 2022 beat Nebraska in that first game and then didn't win another game the rest of the season. But their first game back, now they took the bye week in there. They came out and they only lost by 1 score to a Duke team. That was Mike Elko's first team at Duke that went 8-4, had a really strong regular season. But they almost beat Duke. They came back the next week and they lost at home by 7 to Southern Illinois, and that set into motion their free fall because they lost by 3 to Miami of Ohio, only lost by 10 to Penn State, but by that point, the will was broken because they got smoked by Wisconsin, beat by Maryland, blown out by Iowa, beaten by Ohio State, beaten by Minnesota, beaten by Purdue, beaten by Illinois. Like, that would be where you're talking, Drew. Like, if they lose, they could be a 3-9 team. That's the scenario right there, is that you lose in such a disastrous way that it builds on itself. And you've got an opponent next week that really could build on that. And I think when we talk defense, that's going to be a fascinating thing to bring up in this. To tie a bow on kind of Avery and some of the offensive stuff in this game, I want to bring up what Andrew had to say. He said, a win is a win. It's nice to see them pull it out instead of just lose. Avery Johnson had almost 6 turnovers and somehow had none. The defense is also up and down. Young secondary, cardiac cats. We also had Hayden say, Matt Wells, I'm losing faith in O-line getting bodied by North Dakota. Fan, I'll let you attack this, and then Drew can as well. Well, maybe Drew should go first since he had some faces there for Hayden. What do you have to say on any Matt Wells distaste at this point in the season?
I think that Matt Wells has called a fine game in both games at times. I think that it is just very hard when you can't run the ball to have any sort of like flow on offense. Now, is that his fault? I mean, partially, yeah. But at some point, your offensive line just needs to be better than North Dakota, or even be half as good as Iowa State's defensive line, because they were not good in Dublin. So, like, I think that he's had some innovative play calls that have worked really, really well. Number one was that the play that I'm calling a pass because it gave Avery a career high in yards. That play was very
well. Hey, I'm just glad that somebody around here respects numbers and values them.
Yes,
that was an innovative play that we've never seen K-State run before. I mean, we talked about it, Mason, after the game in Ireland, the play that Jace Brown ran. Like, we're seeing innovative play calling, and the utilization of the weapons, I think, has been fun. Mm-hmm. That what you need to see more of, though, it's just going to straight up just be, can the offensive line do anything? Because until you can run the ball, you're going to have drives where like you look unstoppable, and then some drives where it's like, have they ever played football before? Because you're going to go like a 3 and out, and it's going to take 8 seconds because you go incomplete, and then you punt. So
yeah, you just can't sequence plays like you would like to right now, or you really need to be a consistent offense.
And really, my whole beef with the offensive line stems from the right side. It'll be interesting because, our guy, Fan, does love to chart plays. I'm interested to see like the success rate and the yards per play on runs to the left versus to the right. Because it felt like every time K-State ran to the right side tonight, it was like running into a brick wall. But when they ran to the left side, it was like 5 yards, 10 yards. I think Davon Rice had one touchdown that was the longer one to the left side. Like the left side felt like it was just wide open the whole game, but the right side got no push. And the right side of the offensive line was a disaster last week. So like that's something that has to get fixed as soon as possible.
Well, and we saw last week, John Pastore had the best PFF grade on the team. He was graded very well there. My Matt Wells thing is, I think he's doing the best he can with what he has to work with right now. This is his first season where like it's his hands that are in charge of the offensive line and everything else on this offense. So it might take some time for whatever he needs to filter down. But like, this is something that falls onto Brian LePac's plate and Drew Little's plate. Like, those are the guys that are in charge that they have to figure it out. But it is going to make things tough. Fan might like this. We know he was a diehard Cowboys fan until he started hating senior citizen Jerry Jones. I just all week, finished watching the Cowboys documentary that was on there. I thought it was very good. Jeff Pearlman can screw right off with, and just, whatever his derogatory sexual term he used for Jerry Jones. I thought it was very good. Yeah, tough stuff. The Cowboys were very good in that era. Like, yeah, that's good. Of course, it's going to portray him favorably. Anyways, there was a point in there where they start talking about the offenses and all this other stuff, and about, I don't even remember which coach it was at this point, but basically maybe it was North Turner, talking about like how, we could throw it and all this stuff, but like the best offenses are the ones that are balanced. And it's very simple and stuff we already know, but it does then just remind you of the situation K-State is in right now, where they can't be balanced because of the opportunity that the running backs have with this offensive line. It's not sufficient enough. So Matt Wells is trying to call plays here with one hand tied behind his back. And it's no different than when you look at Major League Baseball and you're going to roll a starting pitcher out there. Well, the starters, more times than not, they've got more than just one pitch. They've got more than just two pitches. Like, you need to have like 3 serviceable pitches to be a guy that can go out and give you 5 innings on any given night. Now, if you can't, then you're kind of reverted back to being a 1-inning guy. And you could look at this K-State offense right now and have moments where you could see him in 1 inning and go, man, they're lights out. Like, it looks good. It looks creative. They're moving the ball. But then you step back and you get the full picture and you realize there are some stretches where it just sinks and you're getting nothing out of it. So from your point of view, fan, what do you make of Matt Wells and this offense right now?
A couple things. First of all, this may be where stats are goofy. K-State today, and this is counting my Devon Rice pass.
Oh, your make-believe
I consider
stats.
A run. The running game and the way I would chart it, and it's still good even when you throw that out. 27 rushes, 177 yards, 6.6 per carry, 56% success rate in the run game. If you throw Devine Ross, the 27-yard run out, that drops a little bit, but it's still over 50% success rate, which I'll take. Now, it should be that against that FCS defense that wasn't very good last year. I'll give you that. But the running game was actually better. The passing game ended up with a 42% success rate, 6.7 yards per pass, 287 yards, not counting that Devon Rice play. So those stats say the run game was actually a little better than the pass game success rate wise. But the weird thing is K-State threw it 61% of the time and ran it 39% of the time. That's not something you would expect out of K-State. First half was almost 70-30 pass. So that was odd. And maybe it's when they come and what that looks like in the consideration of the passing game. I think after last week and without Dylan Edwards, I think Matt Wells thought he wanted to come out and throw it. And I think that was his goal early in the game. And I think part of it was to work on that. And it in some ways that may have backfired, but at the same time, the offense really never was the major problem with this game. Yeah. The defense was a disaster that we'll get to. The second thing that here's what I liked. As I was watching this game, I'm like, we are shifting or doing motion on almost 90% of our plays. Like, we would line up and move and shift, go to empty and move from empty to bringing it back to the backfield. I love that stuff. Like, I think that makes it really tough on a defense. So I thought we did a lot of cool stuff. And as Drew pointed out, there were some cool schemes. We threw that Devon Rice pass run, whatever you want to call it, play was a very cool play. There were some other very cool plays. You talked about the wheel route that should have been a touchdown. Some really nice design stuff. I think Wells is doing a good job mixing it up. Lots of unbalanced formations, which puts pressure on the defense. So I think he's doing creative stuff. Like, people always say, well, vanilla, we're not. I think he's being creative. I do think our offensive line is an issue. I think they're trying to figure out the right combination of 5. And I think Drew is right. The right side is struggling. You had that and we changed up who was going to play the right guard in this game. And I think that is something that's a work in progress until they figure it out. You got a returning center You got Poirier, who, got taken out of this game. So your only other major returning player you've eventually took out of the game. So the offensive line's got to figure it out. I mean, to me, that's the key. I think we've got a solid, good group of receivers. I think we've got two solid backs, even without Dylan Edwards. Because I think my highlight besides Avery Johnson on the offense and Jace Brown was Devon Rice. I thought he played a really good game. I have him down for 8 rushes, 67 yards, and a 75% success rate on 8.4 yards per carry, counting that as a rush. I'll take that from a true freshman any day of the week. And even Jackson wasn't awful. 11 plays, 55 yards, 5 yards a carry, 45% success rate. So that's not awful from your backfield. Much better than last week against Iowa State. Maybe not what you want against a mediocre FCS defense, but I think the running backs improved this week.
Yeah, no, it was definitely, it was better. And you could see that they had an impact on this game. And Joe Jackson also caught the game-winning touchdown too. And they were able to be effective at times with that. Chris points out the series with Gus Hawkins all seemed to go really well. Need to see more. He showed at the right side. Yeah, I think you have to play him. And I think I was texting with Drew and Scott Wildcat during the game. We're in this era where, I get it's K-State. You don't want to say that stars matter and all this, but Gus Hawkins was the highest ranked player in his recruiting class that came to K-State. And when you get players of his caliber at a place like K-State and a conference like the Big 12, you need to use him. And when they used him tonight, you got something good out of it. And I understand you have options and you bring guys in and all this. I think they leaned a little bit to start the year because you just don't know what you have until you get into games. I see people all the time, they try ripping into us because oh, you guys were wrong. You said they were going to be this. Look, we only get to see 2 practices in August, and we don't really get to see much.
80% of it is stretching.
Yeah, we get to see them stretch, and you could go to any practice, and you might be able to tell, oh, this team's going to really suck. But most teams, you would go to a practice, and you'd be like, okay. What are you taking away from that? Because you're not doing everything that you would with the quarterback, all this other stuff. But I think they've leaned on older guys' experience. I think you got to scrap that. I think you got to find a way to get this thing going. And I'm not sure that some of the guys that you have on the line are going to get it done.
Yeah, Gus Hawkins was the best player that played on the right side of K-State's offensive line tonight, and it was not close.
And I mean, look, Taylor Poitier, I know he's been here forever, but maybe that's a problem. I don't have a ton of faith in that spot. Sam Hecht has to play better. I thought the snaps were a little all over the place tonight again. And we saw that be an issue at one point last week against Iowa State. So the offensive line, you're not getting it from your newcomers, and you're also not really getting it from your returners that have been here for a long time now. They're just a disaster all the way around.
If your name is not John Pastore, you should not feel comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's not a good place to be early in the season. The receivers, Jace Brown had a huge night, 12 catches, 109 yards, 1 touchdown. Jerron Tibbs, 3 catches, 55 yards and a touchdown. And then Jerron Bradley, 5 catches, 46 yards. And Jace Brown, I think, I don't have the sheet.
No love for Adonis Moisey, which we learned that's how he says his name tonight. No love for his catch?
Yeah, well, look, I would personally love it, but there's one guy here that probably wouldn't. Anyways, I think looking at what they did, first off, Jace had 16 targets tonight too, so he caught 12 balls. He got 16. This is what we talked about in the offseason was you need to force feed him. He is that caliber of receiver, and through 2 games of the season, he's proven it that he is a first-team Big 12 receiver right now. Bradley was good. That his addition has already paid off. Whatever it is that you needed to do to get Bradley to come play at K-State, he's already given you 20 times more than what I expected out of him. Fan, from your point of view, what do you make of the receivers? Because I do think that there are still some people that are going to want to say, oh, these receivers are supposed to be the best under Kleiman, and this is what we get. I think they've been pretty good to start the season.
I think they've been really good. And this goes back to to the discussion about Wells, getting Brown 16 targets and him catching 75% of them is a good design of your offense. You're getting your best receiver with the most experience, targets and touches, and he's taken advantage of it. I thought, wasn't big average per catch, 9.1, but he made plays when he needed to. I agree with you on Bradley. He's been really good. He's looking more like the guy we saw at Texas Tech as a sophomore that was one of the leading top 10 receivers probably in the Big 12 as a sophomore at Texas Tech. And I think we're seeing that kind of player. And Tibbs maybe hasn't quite lived up to the hype, but he did catch the touchdown, even if it was on a tip, and had 55 yards, second on the team, which you'll take, 18.3 per touch, per catch, which is a solid performance from him. You're still getting the ball to your tight ends. It's kind of mixed up with Swanson and Oakley. You had a couple so close plays that could have been even more. Oakley had a drop as well. So you're mixing the ball around all over the field to a bunch of different receivers. You're getting tons of touches by those guys and targets, but you're targeting your best guys. You're targeting Brown, you're targeting Bradley, you're targeting Tibbs, and then Oakley as your top four guys, which is what it should be. And so they're performing at a level that I think they're not maybe quite, but they're pretty close to living up to the hype of the best receiving core for sure under Kleiman, and then the best pair of transfers under Kleiman. And we'll see how that plays out as the season goes long. But I think early returns are this receiving core is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I get people think receivers, you need massive plays. And
yep.
I mean, you're getting those. Like, we've seen more big plays in these games than what you're accustomed to for K-State receivers. But it's also just getting more than one guy that can step up for you and help out. We're going to talk about defense at some point in this show to close things out. I know Drew's, again, making big eyes. He's not having it with some of this stuff. But, boy, if the defense pisses you off, Drew, I've got one other unit that could really drive you crazy. Let's go live to Nate Katzer, who's having one hell of a night, I would imagine. Don't read the message boards, Cats. Please do not do that. Actually, I hope you do. Maybe it'll light a fire into you to maybe have somebody other than Sterling Lockett do one damn good thing on special teams. Let's talk about it, because it's a massive problem for this team. And it's almost downright disrespectful to what Bill Snyder built, to where you legitimately are special teams. There is one thing that you do 1,000 times better than everybody else in the country. And it was a lock that was going to be the case every single year. That's not the case anymore. And now you look like one of the worst teams in the country, because you have a punter that's not flipping the field for you ever. He can't do a long punt. He can't do a short punt. You could make arguments that, like, the punt that ended up in a touchback, that was a disaster. You gave up a key return when you didn't need to, out to the 35-yard line. Bryce Norrenberg fumbled on a kick return tonight, which was disastrous. And Drew, you can vouch for me. Like 40 minutes before that happened, I sent a text to him and I said, Bryce Norrenberg is going to fumble on a kickoff this year.
Yeah, it was the previous kickoff that you said that he was going to fumble on one this season, and it ended up being that next one. But yeah, special teams. It's like one thing to be like bad and like get away with it, but like they are so bad that like it could cost a game again, because it's weirdly, it's not the kicking game. Luis Rodriguez's field goal would have been good from like 60, the one that he attempted and made. But it's like the punting is horrible. Simon McClanahan can't hit one short, and he can't hit one long. Like you're punting on North Dakota side of the field. You expect to maybe get down like the 2-yard line. No, didn't even have a chance. Goes out of the end zone. He has a really bad punt when you need a long one. I saw somebody post on Twitter during
his longest punt of the night was 43 yards.
It was a touchback. That's never a good sign. I saw somebody post on Twitter today during the game, and it made me laugh, and especially because K-State won. It's like, I can like laugh about this. Somebody said that K-State should not let the North Dakota punter leave Manhattan because he was so good. But yeah, Nordenberg, you can't be fumbling on a kickoff return. It doesn't even like remotely get close to evening out that he had two pretty decent ones. When Sterling Lockett could actually return a punt because the K-State blocked a gunner, he had a pretty good one, and then one heady play by him, I might add, to not let that ball roll and lose field position or time, and to just dive on the ball. Yep. Heady play. But holy cow, yeah, you can't even get.
Some are saying Sterling Lockett has more clutch hands than his brother.
You can't even get good kick coverage after you finally take the lead with a minute to go. Like, I'm just asking for them to not be terrible. Is that too much to ask for?
Apparently it is, because people are pointing out that Nate Katzer is getting promotions, and
then even the field goal that Rodriguez ends up banging in, that still wasn't even a good snap. It was actually Simon McClanahan was a disaster punting the ball tonight, and has really been for the last 15 games now. But great hands on that snap, because that was not a good snap.
So I want to bring this up for you, Fan. And first off, we did see the one good Nuremberg return that would have been key late. K-State did nothing with it, gave it back, and it was the drive after that they scored the go-ahead touchdown. That's why he's back there, is because of his speed and because they do think that he is a guy that is capable of breaking one off. But he is shown to be very loose with the ball back there, and almost to the stage where I think you could call him reckless with the way that he runs, which, some people are thinking, well, Crash Eckler, very reckless. Yeah, but he wasn't holding the football when he was reckless. He was reckless in that he was just trying to kill guys out there. Bryce Norberg is almost getting himself killed with some of the returns and putting himself in a situation where even if you think you can hold on to the ball, you could get hit weird, you could fall weird, and the ball's coming out. And we saw tonight the fumble happens, and it's not good. Sterling Lockett was the lone bright spot on special teams with Luis Rodriguez, because those hands were as sure as they come. He was heady back there. He had the one good return when, like you said, Drew, they finally got him a block. And I think they probably need to – and we totally forgot to mention that they forced a punt by North Dakota and then gave him a first down because of a running into the kicker call. At this point, I think you need to do more that you can to try and give Sterling Lockett the opportunity to return one. And, he probably does deserve the chance to go back there on kicks, because you know what? If we're talking about guys we trust and we believe in, it's Avery Johnson, it's Jace Brown and Jerron Bradley, and Sterling Lockett is probably next up in guys that you can rely upon what they're going to do in their role this season. So, Fan, from your point of view and how you see the special team situation, how hard should people really be on Nate Katzer, or is this just, the new era of college football where special teams aren't as important, and so guys aren't as accustomed to it, and like the coach can only do so much, players have to go make plays? Where do you stand on this and make of where K-State special teams sits right now?
I will say I've been more neutral on the whole thing with Katzler until now. Like, we're in an era where maybe you're not going to make as many big plays in the return game. You need to have a good kicker. You need to have a good punter. You need to have returners that don't hurt you. And I think the issue now is we now have back-to-back games with a turnover on special teams. You talked about the punt, block, penalty. Like, you just can't have those kind of mistakes on special teams in this era. Like, you have to have at worst, you have to have a neutral special teams. And right now we don't have a neutral special teams. We have a negative special teams because of the mistakes we're making. We're well beyond the point of K-State being the team that doesn't beat themselves. And a major issue is special teams, that we're beating ourselves with mistakes on special teams, and you can't do that. And you can't make the mistakes we're making. I agree with you. Sterling Lockett was a net positive. Rodriguez was a net positive, but overall special teams was a net negative in this game. And we're just fortunate that we forced a turnover after that turnover on the kickoff return.
It's the same thing as last week. Like you got
yes,
bailed out.
Yes, we got bailed out on both turnovers on special teams, but they did score after the penalty on the roughing the punter, which you just can't have. Like those are mistakes you cannot make and win games in this era. And that's the negative. Like, what's going on here? How is that going to be fixed? And that's got to be fixed soon, and it's got to be fixed going into the next game, or something's got to change.
Yeah, you can't have a good season and average 1 special teams turnover per game, and like 4
that's a bad stat.
You can insert word did I just see from special teams?
And really,
I'd say what the cats are, you know?
Yeah. And really the running into the kicker is a special teams turnover.
Yeah.
I mean, North Dakota ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive. Like that,
yes.
That is problematic. And it's so crazy to me because obviously 2018 was disgusting for K-State football. But special teams saved their butts against South Dakota. And when Kleiman took over, special teams was still rolling well. Good. They had a great year 2019. They returned kicks in 4 games?
Yep.
Malik Knowles and Josh Youngblood both had big kick returns that season. And then I would say, 2020, we had the Phillip Brooks, the 2 punt returns against Kansas. 2021, 22, Brooks took a punt back against Missouri. Like special teams kicker was a disaster in 22 until Ty Zentner stepped in.
Mm-hmm.
But special teams was starting to slide to just being a neutral type of thing. And that's fine. If you want to make the argument that because of the rule changes and the way the game is played now, that special teams isn't something that you can turn into an overwhelming positive, maybe it's tougher now to do that. And I would listen to that argument. But it has gone so far in the opposite way that K-State is worse on special teams than their opponents in almost every single game that they're playing right now. And it has become a negative. It has become a liability. And you just can't let that happen. Like it's
last year, Arizona State literally had on-campus tryouts for a kicker.
Yeah.
And K-State was still worse on special teams than Arizona State.
I think Chris Kleiman needs to hit up Colleen Corbin. K-State soccer, are they back from the East Coast yet? Or we
got one more game against Harvard, I think, on Monday.
Okay. All right. So they'll be back in time. I would say the second they get off the plane,
get a punter.
Chris Kleiman better be waiting for him. And he's just taking a couple of the keepers and saying, I'm going to see if you can punt for us, because that's a problem here too. Let's move on to defense. We've been going for a long time. I appreciate everybody sticking with us. I also don't want to get kicked out of the press box. Number one, because it might get late. Number two, they might not appreciate how negative I am to Nate Katzer right now. But Katzer is going to be my substitution for bad words moving forward on the KSO show. Very similar to, there's that song that is says, gives you hell or whatever, and gives you. When I was younger, I would change that to gives you Matt, and it would just frustrate my middle brother off. And so that's effective. That's the good form of bullying. It's helpful to build character and stuff, so that we're going to be good bullies to Nate Katzer, and hopefully he improves and gets better on that front. Let's talk defense, though, because they got problems as well. Jerry Kaminsky was allowed to go 23 of 38 tonight, 231 yards, 1 touchdown, but most importantly, no interceptions. Tobias Nsami, I saw the quote about when I was talking about guys that I think you could rely upon. You're right. Tobias Nsami and Austin Romaine have pretty much done their jobs this year as you would want them to, but everybody else has struggled. You got a great go of it from Cody Stufflebean tonight, like 2 sacks in a game from him where you absolutely needed it. One of them forced that fumble after you gave it away on the kickoff. Like, you're getting more out of Cody Stufflebean than I would have thought that you needed to rely on this year, and that's a positive sign. How do you evaluate the defense to this point in the season, Fan?
The last 6 quarters have been rough. Well, maybe 5 of the last 6. Like, I think the third quarter, for the most part today, was pretty good, but I'm not impressed. 2.7 yards or points per drive for North Dakota was not in my expectations for this game. 5 yards per play is rough. They stepped up the last 2 drives and got stops, but they also had opportunities to step up and gave up back-to-back touchdown drives for North Dakota to take the lead. So I think the secondary, you mentioned earlier, I think the secondary is a struggle. I think the front and the linebackers are solid, but you can only make – there's so many plays, like we were talking in the press box, me, Kurtz, and DY. I mean, there were multiple third downs where our corners were dropping 15 yards and it's 3rd and 8. Like, what are you doing? Like, I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I do think they dialed back. Clandy dialed back the blitzes in some of those multiple drives toward the end, and K-State made stops. And there were mistakes made, but overall, I think the defense is not where it needs to be. Like, even with so many new secondary players, the defense has got to be better. You just can't allow that many points per drive, that many yards per play against a North Dakota team that I get that they probably ran some different stuff than you expected going into this game. But, man, there was a lot of mess in that defense during this game and big plays given up. Like, that's the thing that, I think that was a problem last year, but especially big plays in the running game. Like, you don't expect North Dakota get chunk run plays against you. And I could see giving up a few pass plays, but the chunk run plays was really the thing that bothered me the most.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Fan.
Yeah.
I've kind of tongue-in-cheek made some texts to Mason and Scott Wildcat. I've kind of talked about it with a little bit of just some of my friends that watched the game. Do you think that going to the 4-2-5 was the right call? Like, they look so out of sync and unsure.
I mean, I think it's going to create those problems because you have guys that you've trained, and especially since they kind of went into the season kind of faking like we're still in the 3-3-5, and then all of a sudden you change. And they talked about in the spring they worked on both. Like, it's tough to run both schemes and really be good at either one. And I think they're kind of caught right now. I think there's a chance the 4-2-5 could make them better as the season goes along. But I think we're seeing the growing pains of making that switch. And I think we saw it in the second half against Iowa State as they adjusted. And I think North Dakota really kind of picked up off those adjustments and was able to exploit K-State. And the biggest thing was, they basically benched their starter from last year, who started all their games, and brought in a new guy. And I think he played pretty well. Like, I'll give him some credit. Like, I'm not going to
real quick. They didn't bring him in. He was the backup last year.
Yes. Yeah, he was there. Like, he's been there for 3 years. Like, he's not like a new guy.
And they only trusted him to throw 5 passes last year. This wasn't like he got some real experience.
So for some reason the light clicked for him. And he beat the incumbent starter, and I think he played pretty well. Like, I'll give him a little bit of credit, but I think some of it was the mistakes we made. Kleiman mentioned the eyes being wrong, and I think that's legit. Like, I think for some reason our guys got beat by. And it's not like North Dakota was doing a bunch of crazy shifts and motions. Somehow we got beat. I think we thought North Dakota was going to run the ball more than they did, because that's kind of was their MO last year. They were a running team, and they came in with this guy. They threw the ball around a lot more than we expected. But that's not an excuse. Like, you should still be able to change that. Like, I agree with you, Mason. Coming into this game, you thought K-State's defense, to make you be impressed with a game against the FCS opponent, should get 2 interceptions. We got 0.
Yeah.
And that's a disappointment. You should get some interceptions.
And it never felt like they were ever close to having one tonight.
They weren't even close to getting one. So that's disappointing for sure. And the defense has got a lot of work to do. Like, I'm much more concerned about the defense than the offense at this point.
Yeah, I think you look at it and they just you feel like with the defense, there's a lot of guessing out there. And it's almost like, it used to be really heavy in my rotation in the old college football games. I got wiser as I got older, but it's like, I'm just guessing a run. I'm committing run up the middle, all those guys. And it's like, sometimes it really works. And other times you get beat on a 50-yard touchdown pass, or, you say it's going to be a run left, it's a run right, you get burnt. And it feels like we're watching the real life version of that with K-State right now, where it's just there's a lot of guessing going on. And yeah, nobody in the secondary is challenging receivers or making a quarterback sweat. And it took last week Rocco Beck to throw a bad ball. Well, it didn't matter. K-State couldn't catch it. This week, the closest that they came was a ball that kind of got tipped, but it still landed like 4 yards in front of Gunnar Maldonado. He never really had a chance to catch it. Best play of the night, and really the only one that I can remember a DB actually making, Amarian Fortenberry actually broke one up. Yeah. And I thought, okay, that's credit. You probably play him more because Zayshawn Rich and Donovan McIntosh haven't done anything that show that they deserve to have the lion's share of snaps at that spot. The safeties are struggling when they get put into coverage. And so there's just a lot of issues with the defense right now. We could go for a long time on this. Drew, I want to throw this out to you, a couple of injury questions that came up here. First, we had the question from let me go back and see if I can find it. Wildcat 1998. How badly do we miss Ryan Davis in pass rush right now? So how much of an impact do you think that has, him not being available to K-State?
I think that it probably plays some impact because, we heard it at the Chris Kleiman press conference on Monday that Jordan Allen is actually playing out of position in the 4-2-5, and he's not supposed to be one of the guys that's in like the primary pass rush defensive end spot. And it's supposed to be more of like that, like wide or weak side defensive end area. So I think that hurts a little bit. But I also think that it hurts you because you're playing Toby Osunsami more, and more than anything tonight. And I don't know if it's because like I could just watch it on TV and was like really like focused in on it. He did have the sack tonight. In a pretty big moment, but it was not one of Toby's best games. Like he was getting beat at the line of scrimmage in run plays. There were certain plays where he was just over pursuing so hard that he ended up allowing a big play. I think that there are going to be times where he's going to have like a splash play and be awesome because he's unblockable in a true pass rush situation. But he still needs to take that next step as a run defender because he was, for as good as he is against the pass, he was as bad against the run tonight.
Yeah. The last question in terms of injury, Lincoln Cure was dressed for the night. Chris says that he saw him dressed on the sideline. Any word on why he didn't play? We didn't get a word on why he didn't. Are you surprised that if he was healthy enough to have the uniform and pads on that K-State wouldn't get him out there and try to use him? Because I saw somebody talk about not getting the tight ends involved as much right now. Tight ends aren't doing anything special either at this point. Garrett Oakley had another significant drop tonight. I think those guys are catching balls a few yards shy of where they actually need to be. Like, people know this. They probably hate it. I'm a tight end truther on this team. They are wildly overrated for what their actual production was last year. Yes, you need somebody to catch touchdowns, but as we are seeing right now, Jace Brown can catch touchdowns. Jerron Tibbs can catch touchdowns. Jerron Bradley can. Joe Jackson can. You're
probably loving that they don't have a touchdown through 2 games.
Well, I didn't even notice, Drew. I didn't even notice. Are you surprised that if Lincoln Cure was able to address that he wasn't on the field at any point tonight?
No, because I think Ethan Newsom was also dressed tonight and didn't play. Like, just because you have a uniform on doesn't mean that you're necessarily healthy enough to play. I think it means that you're getting closer.
Yeah, it might mean maybe we see you next week. And
yeah, I was about to say it probably means that we probably see him against Army if he's close enough to wear a uniform this week and didn't last week. So, you also brought up that Garrett Oakley drop. How different does the game play out if Garrett Oakley makes that catch? Because the next play was the Avery fumble. And then North Dakota goes and makes it a 3-point game and then eventually takes the lead after K-State's offense sputters after it got cut to 3. You could make an argument that if K-State loses, that Garrett Oakley play is probably the biggest play of the game.
Sounds like you're putting a lot on. Sounds like you're putting a lot on the tight ends there. That's something to keep in mind. So I think seeing those guys dress but didn't play, you might see them next week then, or at least have the opportunity. it's going to be important against Army to have more guys in there because we saw what K-State struggled with. And if you're talking about eye discipline being a problem, Army is going to give that struggle to you next week, even though they lost to Tarleton.
I will say I was not impressed with how their offense looked. It doesn't look near as explosive as it did last year. And then what it's really going to come down to too is their quarterback got injured near the end of the game. It looked like it was probably just cramps. But when the backup came in and had to throw a few times in overtime and then in double overtime, holy cow, it was not pretty.
I'll end with this on a overarching note. Chris Kleiman post-game, he's continued to be, I think, a little bit more transparent, a little bit more upfront about his frustrations. That's a good thing, but it can only do so much. At some point, you have to start doing the things that correct the problems. Whether that's in the offseason, you need to make some changes with your coaching staff. A lot of these guys have been in place for a long time. Sometimes you can have voices get stale. These guys in the moment need to figure out how to make their units better and how to improve that situation. I just wanted to get that on record out there because I appreciate how Chris Kleiman has handled this stuff recently, but also your words only go so far. The actions are also important, and Chris Kleiman needs that from his coaching staff right now because they're not doing him any favors because it's clear that it's wearing on him and his guys are failing him because the head coach can only do so much. He's got his hand in all this other stuff. He's got to try to get it right. He's relying on these coaches to do it, and far too many of the guys that he trusts are failing him right now. And ultimately, it got Courtney Messingham fired after the 2021 season. And there's room where changes maybe could have been made last year. I think he got bailed out in the fans' eyes by the fact that Connor Riley got the Cowboys O-line job. If things continue the way they are right now, you have multiple coaches that have been here for multiple years that will need to be removed at the end of this season. So those guys need to get it together quick because a serious college football program, their heads would be on the chopping block if they continue to perform the way they do. Let's close it out with one final question from Tom Terrible here. Can this team still compete for a Big 12 title this year? I'll just simplify it. We all had, preseason expectations and our record predictions. I had them 11-1. Fan, I think you had them 11-1, 10-2. And then Drew, same type of deal right there. At this point now, where do you guys have your final record for K-State? And then that can be the last word for the night. At this stage, based on what we saw tonight, I'll drop it down to 8-4. And I'm not even sure, that's generous based off what we've seen the first 2 weeks. Fan muted himself. He pulled the me when I've got screaming kids in the background.
Yeah,
there he is.
I would say I don't think we're as bad as we look tonight, but I don't know what the ceiling is either with this team. I think that I think you're right. 8-4 probably feels like we're on the track for another kind of Chris Kleiman type 8-4 season, which, in some ways is not what you expect. My biggest issue is you can't go 5-4 in the Big 12. That's when I look at last year, going 5-4 and finishing outside the top 6 in the Big 12 is my biggest disappointment. You can't do that again. And that's what I want to see improve. You got to be at least 6-3, if not 7-2. And that's tough now. You already got the one loss. So it's hard to say. I don't know if today was a one-off because of the lag from Ireland and the new staff that you had trouble preparing for. And, Joe Jackson mentioned after the game that they overlooked this team maybe. So I don't know if that's it or if this is who you are. So we'll find out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I think, what this team is about. I think Army will be in some ways easier because you know what to expect. I don't think Army is very good because they lost their quarterback, who's probably their best player since the 50s in that program. And I think K-State will handle Army. My biggest concern is going to Arizona on a Friday night and how they handle that. And that will be really and I don't even know if that's a great measuring stick, but it's going to be really what I look for.
And they're at least moving the ball and yes, keeping Hawaii at arm's length tonight, which is something that I didn't expect going into it. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Drew, you just give me your record prediction now, because I am worried that they're going to kick me out of the press box. I'm hearing noises. It's also downpouring now, so this is the worst time to leave, but I am worried that they're going to be like, wrap it up, loser.
I'll say 8-4, maybe 9-3. Big 12 as a whole just doesn't look
really very nice.
Big 12 as a whole doesn't look great, to be honest.
Yeah.
Interesting too. Arizona kind of handling Hawaii. Noah Fifita is having a bad game though.
Well, it doesn't matter, because this secondary, good, bad, mediocre, doesn't matter. Quarterbacks are tearing them up right now, so they got to get better. That's a big problem for the Cats. We'll give full breakdowns on it throughout the week at KSO. I'll have my grades. You'll all hate them, but I'll do them anyways. Drew will have plenty of stuff. We'll get some great insight from Fan. DY will have everything he needs as always, and we'll be back again next week doing the same thing about the same time against Army. Happy for those of you that did beat out the rain and got back home from 2 hours away. I believe I'm staying at my brother's house tonight. I am not getting in the car and driving back to Wichita. Jealous of those two that are already at home. So like I said, we're back again next week, probably around the same time for the game with Army, since it's also a 6 o'clock kickoff. We'll have the pregame show like always through the week, and then regular shows each day, going over everything that's going on with the Cats, who are 1-1. They get in the win column, and yeah, it is a moral loss, but it's not an actual loss, which would have been truly disastrous. K-State didn't correct their problems tonight, but they at least saved the season for one more week, because losing this game, it kills everything you got. And I think if you lose it, the fans are probably already checked out, and that's totally fine. If you lose this game, you have players that check out, though. And so it was important, and it gives you the opportunity to keep things moving and maybe get better because you won this game. So you take the win, you move on, and you hope it looks better against Army. You take care of Arizona, survive that anyway. You get to the bye 3-1, then you come home and you get to play a terrible UCF team. That, yeah, I know K-State hasn't looked good, but they're probably better than UCF, because Scott Frost is a fraud. We'll have Fraud Watch and all that throughout the week as well, so get excited for a full week of things at K-State Online. We'll try to be better than the Cats have been through 2 weeks of the season.